200 kilometers. 36 hours. Russian defensive lines shattered. American mechanized forces drove deeper in a day and a half than most offensives achieve in months. The media called it Blitzkrieg 2.0. Military analysts called it revolutionary. But here's what nobody tells you about this breakthrough. It wasn't about speed, wasn't about armor, wasn't about overwhelming firepower. The real reason American forces penetrated 200 kilometers in 36 hours is something completely different. Something that only becomes clear when you understand what happened in the first 6 hours. When you realize what the Russians never saw coming. Just weeks ago, American mechanized forces faced 200 kilometers of Russian defensive lines. Multiple defensive belts, prepared positions, minefields, artillery coverage, anti-tank systems, every defensive advantage Russia could establish. Intelligence estimated breakthrough would require weeks, predicted heavy casualties, suggested alternative strategies. Then American forces attacked, and within 36 hours they were 200 kilometers behind initial Russian positions. Every defensive line penetrated, every prepared position bypassed or destroyed. Complete operational collapse of Russian defense. Hour 0. American attack begins, but not where expected. Not against strongest Russian positions. Not with maximum force concentration. American mechanized units attack across entire fronts simultaneously. Dozens of small penetrations. Battalion-sized task forces probing everywhere. Russians respond to each probe. Commit reserves. Reinforce threatened sectors. Exactly what American planners expected. Exactly what they wanted. Because these weren't real attacks. They were deception. Fixing Russian forces in positions while real breakthrough happened somewhere else. Russian commanders watch American attacks, count vehicles, estimate force strength, calculate where main effort must be, prepare responses, allocate reserves, standard defensive doctrine executed professionally. They see American forces attacking, see some penetrations, see most attacks repulsed. Situation seems manageable. Defensive lines hold. Russians feel confident. They're winning initial engagements, destroying American vehicles, inflicting casualties. Everything according to their doctrine, except they're not fighting the real battle. The real breakthrough hasn't started yet. Hour 6. The critical moment. While Russian attention focuses on dozens of small attacks across 200-kilometer front, American main effort launches. Not against prepared defenses, not through minefields. Through gap in Russian lines nobody knew existed. Gap created through 6 hours of electronic warfare. 6 hours of cyber operations. 6 hours of information warfare that convinced Russian systems there were forces where none existed. Convinced Russian commanders gaps were defended when they weren't. Created digital phantom army that looked real to Russian sensors but didn't exist physically. American breakthrough force drives through undefended gap. 4 heavy brigade combat teams. Over 400 armored vehicles. Moving at maximum speed. No resistance. No mines. No anti-tank systems. Because Russian defensive systems were told this area was already defended. Were told American forces couldn't be there. Russian sensors showed forces protecting this sector. Russian maps indicated defensive positions. All false. All created through electronic warfare and cyber operations. Russians defended against phantom threats while real American force drove through gap they didn't know existed. Which matters more in modern mechanized warfare? A. Armor and firepower. B. Speed and maneuver. C. Information dominance. Most pick A or B. Wrong. Answer is C. And this breakthrough proves it absolutely. American forces didn't smash through Russian defenses. They drove around them through gap created by making Russians see things that weren't there. Information warfare created breakthrough. Physical forces exploited it. Without information dominance, speed and armor mean nothing. With information dominance, breakthrough is inevitable. Hour 12. American mechanized forces are 50 kilometers behind initial Russian lines. Russian commanders finally realize something is wrong. Reports of American armor deep in rear areas, initially dismissed as mistakes. Impossible. No breakthrough detected. No defensive positions reported penetrated. Must be reconnaissance units. Then reports multiply. Hundreds of American vehicles, moving in formation, attacking supply depots, destroying command posts. This isn't reconnaissance. This is breakthrough. But how? Where did defenses fail? Russian commanders search for answer. Find none. Because defenses didn't fail. Defenses never engaged breakthrough force. Electronic warfare and cyber operations created gap Russians couldn't see. Russian forces attempt to respond, redirect reserves, establish new defensive line, block American advance. But reserves are committed forward, deployed against American deception attacks. Must be withdrawn, redeployed. Time required. Meanwhile, American forces continue advancing. Every hour penetrates deeper. Every kilometer makes Russian position worse. Russian logistics infrastructure behind front lines is undefended, designed for rear area security, not stopping armored breakthrough. American forces destroy supply dumps, eliminate command centers, sever communications. Russian defensive coherence collapses. Here's what everyone misses. This wasn't traditional breakthrough. Traditional breakthrough concentrates maximum force against single point, overwhelms through firepower, accepts casualties, achieves penetration, then exploits. American breakthrough was different. Created gap through information warfare, concentrated force where Russians weren't, achieved penetration without fighting through defenses, then exploited at maximum speed. Zero casualties in breakthrough phase. Overwhelming success without proportional cost. New paradigm in mechanized warfare. Hour 18. American forces are 100 kilometers behind initial Russian lines. Russian defensive strategy collapses completely. Frontline forces still in positions, still defending. But command and control is severed. Logistics are cut. No supplies. No orders, no coordination. Russian units know American forces are behind them. Don't know how many, don't know where, don't know what to do. Some attempt to retreat, get intercepted by American units. Some attempt to hold positions, get bypassed and isolated. Russian army and theater ceases functioning as coherent force. Russian commanders attempt counterattacks, gather available forces, attack American breakthrough corridor, try to cut American supply lines, restore defensive continuity. These counterattacks face full American combined arms capability. Airstrikes, artillery, attack helicopters. The Russian forces attempting counterattack are detected immediately, tracked continuously, engaged decisively. Counterattacks fail before reaching objectives. American information dominance means Russian forces can't mass without being detected and destroyed. Every tactical advantage Americans created through information warfare multiplies. Russians fighting blind against enemy that sees everything. Stay with me. Hour 24 explains why this isn't just successful offensive. It's revolutionary change in warfare. What happens next demonstrates future conflicts, shows why traditional defensive doctrine failed, reveals why information dominance matters more than physical forces. The breakthrough succeeded, but the exploitation phase shows something even more important, something that changes everything about modern warfare. Hour 24. American mechanized forces are 150 kilometers behind initial Russian lines. But they're not just advancing linearly. They're operating in multiple directions simultaneously. Some forces push deeper. Some turn and attack Russian positions from rear. Some establish blocking positions, cutting Russian retreat routes. This isn't single breakthrough. This is complete maneuver warfare enabled by information dominance. Americans know where every Russian unit is. Russians don't know where American units are. Information asymmetry creates tactical opportunities impossible in previous wars. Russian forces attempt organized withdrawal, pull back from forward positions, establish new defensive line, save forces from encirclement. But they can't withdraw without American forces detecting movement. American air power engages withdrawing columns. Artillery hits choke points. Attack helicopters destroy vehicles. Russian withdrawal becomes rout. Units flee in disorder. Abandon equipment. Casualties mount. Some Russian units surrender rather than face destruction during withdrawal. Others scatter into small groups. Cohesive Russian army and theater disintegrates. American logistics follow breakthrough force. Supply convoys, fuel trucks, ammunition carriers, maintenance teams. Everything needed to sustain operations. Russian attempts to attack these logistics fail. American forces provide security. Attack helicopters patrol flanks. UAVs monitor approaches. Any Russian force attempting to threaten American logistics is detected and destroyed before getting close. Russian doctrine assumes attacking enemy logistics in rear areas is viable. American information dominance makes it impossible. Logistics flow sustains advance. Hour 30. American forces reach 175 kilometers penetration. Russian defensive lines in theater have collapsed completely. Some isolated pockets still resist. Most Russian forces are retreating, surrendering, or destroyed. American casualties for entire operation are remarkably light. Hundreds wounded, dozens killed, against Russian casualties in tens of thousands. Loss ratio is unprecedented, not from superior American tactics in traditional sense, from information dominance creating conditions where Americans fight only when they have overwhelming advantage. Avoid fair fights. Create favorable engagements. Achieve victory with minimal cost. Russian doctrine for defending against mechanized breakthrough emphasizes depth, multiple defensive belts, forces positioned to contain penetrations, counterattack to restore lines. All of this requires knowing where breakthrough occurred, requires seeing enemy forces, requires coordinating response. American information warfare made all this impossible. Russian sensors showed false information. Russian communications were disrupted. Russian commanders couldn't see battlefield, couldn't coordinate response. Every element of Russian defensive doctrine requires information. Americans denied that information. Defensive doctrine became useless. Hour 36. American mechanized forces controlled 200 kilometers of formerly Russian-held territory. Mission accomplished. Objective achieved. Russian forces in theater are combat ineffective. Tens of thousands casualties. Most equipment destroyed or abandoned. Command structure collapsed. No organized resistance. American forces established defensive positions. Prepare for Russian attempts to counteroffensive. But those attempts will take weeks to organize. Meanwhile, Americans control territory, control logistics routes, control strategic positions, complete operational victory. Stop. Everything described sounds like superior American military capability. Better training, better equipment, better tactics. Standard narrative about American military superiority. That's partially true, but misses fundamental point. This breakthrough succeeded primarily through information warfare, through making Russians see false battlefield, through creating gaps in defenses by convincing Russian systems those gaps were defended. Physical breakthrough exploited conditions created through information dominance. Without information warfare, this breakthrough would have been traditional grinding offensive. Weeks of combat, heavy casualties, slow progress. Information warfare made rapid breakthrough possible. Now the complete truth. American planners knew traditional breakthrough against prepared Russian defenses would be costly, would take time, would risk failure. So they didn't attempt traditional breakthrough. They used information warfare to create conditions for breakthrough. 6 months of preparation, mapping Russian networks, identifying vulnerabilities, developing tools to exploit those vulnerabilities. When offensive began, information warfare had already won. Physical forces just executed exploitation phase. Russians were defeated in information domain before first American tank crossed line of departure. The preparation was meticulous. American cyber teams infiltrated Russian military networks months before offensive, not to destroy system, to understand them, map them. How information flows, where decisions get made, which sensors feed which commanders, which communications links connect which units. American intelligence built complete digital model of Russian defensive network. Every node, every connection, every vulnerability. This knowledge became weapon. American electronic warfare specialists studied Russian radar systems, learned their frequencies, their patterns, their blind spots, developed jamming techniques that didn't shut down radars but fed them false information, made them see targets that didn't exist, miss targets that did exist. Russian radar operators saw screens full of contacts, thought they understood battlefield. We're looking at American-generated fiction. Reality was completely different. American cyber operations targeted Russian command systems, not through dramatic attacks that shut everything down, through subtle manipulations that changed information slightly, made force locations appear different by few kilometers, made unit strengths appear different by small percentages, changes small enough not to trigger alarms, large enough to create cumulative strategic effect. Russian commanders made decisions based on information they trusted. Information was false. Decisions were wrong. Advantage shifted to Americans. The digital Phantom Army was masterpiece of deception. American information warfare created thousands of false signatures. Radar returns from non-existent vehicles. Communications traffic from phantom units. Electronic emissions from imaginary command posts. Russian intelligence systems collected this data, analyzed it, concluded American forces were positioned where phantom signatures indicated. Russian defensive planning allocated forces against these phantom threats. Real American breakthrough force assembled where Russians thought nothing existed. Russian defensive preparations were extensive. Minefields, tank ditches, prepared positions, artillery zones, everything done correctly by traditional doctrine. But doctrine assumes accurate information, assumes sensors work correctly, assumes communications are reliable. American cyber operations and electronic warfare invalidated these assumptions. Russian systems showed false information. Russian sensors detected phantom threats. Russian communications were disrupted selectively. All defensive preparations became irrelevant when information supporting them was false or incomplete. American mechanized forces executed brilliantly, drove 200 kilometers in 36 hours, maintained cohesion, sustained logistics, achieved objectives. But physical execution succeeded because information warfare created conditions for success. American tank crews and infantry fought bravely, but they fought against enemy already defeated in information domain, against enemy that couldn't see them, couldn't coordinate against them, and couldn't defend effectively. Information warfare is foundation. Physical operations are exploitation of that foundation. Future mechanized warfare will follow this pattern. Information warfare creates conditions. Physical forces exploit conditions. Side without information dominance loses regardless of physical capabilities. Russian army in this theater had armor, had artillery, had defensive positions. All useless when information supporting their employment was false. Americans didn't need to destroy Russian capabilities physically, just needed to deny them information required to employ those capabilities effectively. Traditional military analysis focuses on equipment counts, tank numbers, artillery pieces, infantry strength. These matter. But information dominance matters more. Americans had fewer forces in theater than Russians. Won decisively, not through superior numbers, through superior information, through cyber warfare, through electronic warfare, through understanding that modern warfare is fought in information domain first, physical domain second. Winning information warfare creates conditions where physical warfare becomes exploitation, not combat. Russian commanders will study this defeat, learn wrong lessons, conclude they needed better equipment, more forces, improved tactics, missed fundamental issue. They lost. Information warfare. Lost before physical combat started. Better equipment won't help if systems controlling that equipment show false information. More forces won't help if unable to coordinate them. Improved tactics won't help if enemy knows your every move while you're blind to theirs. Information warfare defeat is more fundamental than American doctrine. Evolution is clear. Information warfare is primary effort. Physical operations are supporting effort. This reverses traditional relationship. Previous wars saw physical operations as primary, information as supporting. Modern warfare sees information as primary, physical as exploitation. Americans understood this. Russians didn't. Result was 200-kilometer breakthrough in 36 hours. Complete operational victory with minimal casualties. Paradigm shift in mechanized warfare. Can traditional mechanized forces survive against information warfare? This engagement says no. Not without defending their own information systems. Not without contesting enemies' information dominance. Russian forces were capable, well-equipped, properly positioned. Lost catastrophically because they lost information warfare. Future forces must prioritize information domain defense, cyber defense, electronic warfare, communication security, sensor validation. Without these, physical capabilities are useless. With these, even inferior forces can compete. American breakthrough of 200 kilometers in 36 hours was unprecedented. Fastest major offensive in modern warfare. Complete destruction of defending force. Minimal attacker casualties. Revolutionary tactical success. But more important is strategic implication. Information warfare decided outcome. Physical warfare exploited information warfare success. This is new. Americans demonstrated it. Others must learn it or face similar defeats. What enabled 200-kilometer breakthrough? Not armor, not speed, not firepower. Information warfare, cyber operations, electronic warfare. Creating false information for Russian systems, generating phantom threats, opening real gaps in defenses Russians didn't detect. Physical breakthrough exploited information warfare success. Without information warfare, breakthrough impossible. With information warfare, breakthrough was inevitable. Simple, absolute. Future of mechanized warfare. 200 kilometers, 36 hours. Blitzkrieg 2.0, but faster than historical Blitzkrieg. More complete, less costly. Historical Blitzkrieg used speed and maneuver to overwhelm defenses. Modern Blitzkrieg uses information warfare to blind defenses, then exploits blindness through speed and maneuver. Same operational concept, different execution, revolutionary results. Americans didn't reinvent mechanized warfare. They evolved it. added information warfare dimension, created capability that makes traditional defenses obsolete. Russian defenses were traditional, well-constructed, properly manned, completely inadequate against information warfare-enabled breakthrough. Future defenses must address information domain, must secure networks, must validate sensor information, must maintain communications under electronic attack. Without this, physical defenses are marginal, line defeated before engaged. Russians learned this lesson catastrophically. Others should learn from Russian experience. Adapt defenses, contest information domain, or face similar defeats. That's complete truth about 200-kilometer breakthrough, about 36-hour offensive, about Blitzkrieg 2.0. Americans won through information warfare. Physical operations exploited information warfare success. Paradigm shift in mechanized warfare. Future conflicts will feature this pattern. Information warfare first, physical exploitation second. Side that wins information warfare wins conflict. Side that loses information warfare loses regardless of physical capabilities. American victory demonstrates this absolutely. Russians' defeat confirms it. Modern warfare has changed fundamentally. Understanding that change determines success or failure in future conflicts. Battle Power, where we explain warfare evolution beyond simple narratives. Subscribe to understand information warfare revolution. This is modern mechanized warfare reality, dominated by information, exploited through physical force, decided before first shot fired.